There we go. Thank you. All right, welcome to the 1776 Syndicate. Just as a reminder of what we do here and the purpose of these calls is we believe this is a resource for people that are running for any elected position, not only in Montana, but across the country. We've worked with people as far as Utah, California, and some on the East Coast, but our home base here in Montana, we've seen a lot of people come through the group, as many as 91 at one time. So the objective here is that we invite elected officials, our people of influence within the Republican Party, our Conservative Party, or share similar beliefs to bring their views and suggestions and to help educate us on what it is that we're trying to do. And we've seen a lot of success in that. About a third of the 1776 members won a primary and are going on to the general. So we hope to have a lot of success there. The calls are recorded. They become a resource on the back end of 1776. And if you can refer anybody that's running for office, if they need a little bit more of a push or education on how to run, we'd love to have them as members. We've made the membership as light as possible, but we want to have an obligation from them, at least that they're bringing a little value to the table. So we have some sustainability here. And then there's a lot of resources on the back end, from campaign guidelines to budget templates, people that you can outreach to, and different ways that we can help you get elected. So with that being said, please hold your comments, anything of negative nature. Otherwise, we're going to have to boot you off. And we'd love to have some great Q&A tonight. So if you're able to formulate some questions after John speaks, we'd love to have your questions, whether for John or Rod and myself. So tonight I asked John Fuller to be on the call because we've got a number of people running for House seats. And I thought it would be very beneficial for the people that are running to understand what the job entails, how to be successful in the job, some mistakes that you don't want to make. Maybe John will share a few of those. But more importantly, if you have any questions because you're getting close to the generals and you want to be informed as to what that job would entail, John's here for you. So with that, John, if you can give us some of your background, talk about your first and second term, some of those mistakes, and maybe some pitfalls and advice for the people that are running for this office.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jim, and thank you, Rod, for having me here on the 1776 Syndicate. And for those of you who are live and watching, and those of you who are watching at a later date, I thank you very much in advance. Sometimes I have to admire those people who would go ahead and listen when they know who it is that's going to be talking, and that in this case being me. Just a couple of things. First, after teaching high school and American government, economics, and history for 45 years, I was retired and thought that I was going to ride off into the sunset and shoot my gun and ride my horses. But I was prevailed upon to continue a service of one shape or another when Congressman Zinke asked me to work for him back in 2014, I think, 2012, and then again in 2014. And so, my knowledge of the political process was extensive, but being involved in campaigns, I was involved in Denny Rehberg's campaign way back in 2000 and 2002, and his Senate campaign some years later. And then, of course, Ryan Zinke's campaign. I thought I knew a lot, and I had run for office before. I was a failed House candidate for what was House District 4 in those days, back in 2008, in Whitefish, which was a Democrat district, which is now pretty much the same as Lynn Bennett's district in House District 5. And I learned a lot, but I lost by 87 votes. And so just talking a little bit about some of the campaign mistakes I made, probably the biggest mistake I made is that when I knocked on doors and met people, I was obsessed with the idea that I had to tell them things. Okay, I would offer to you that probably the most important thing you can do is ask them what they're thinking and what you can do for them, what they expect, rather than tell them what you think they need to know or want to know. Ask them what they want you to know. Everyone loves to believe, of course, that you want to know what they want to say, but that was one of my biggest failures. And of course, it's probably has to do with something with the fact that I had spent 45 years informing young people of what they needed to know, and I wasn't too particularly interested in what the high school students had to say. But anyway, just keep that in mind as you go door to door. But one of the things I've always promoted and liked about Montana politics is all of your elected officials are available and accessible. So be available and be accessible when you talk going door to door. Secondly, don't try to do it all yourself. You know, a lot of times what happens is you don't seem to like you can get much help. Try to find somebody to help you. In my case, I've had, in recent elections, I've had really, really good help, people that have helped me a lot. And I always used to tell students, and it's true in this game too, remember, two things happen when you ask for help, and they're both good. The first thing that happens is that people think you really want to know it. And number two, how smart you are for asking them. So do not hesitate to ask for help to people. Use that help, but don't let your instincts let you down. If your instincts tell you to go some direction, remember what you're in this for. You're in this because your instincts tell you what is needed to serve the people. And so when your instincts conflict with advice you're getting, ponder it carefully, make sure it's not your ego talking, and then go with your instincts, go with your gut, because that's what you've got to be is you've got to be you, and the people have to believe you, and your sincerity is what you're really selling. Okay, and so those would be my campaign tips and techniques. And of course, if anybody can help you in the various, I'm a technology neophyte, but I have been able to get help from people that are capable. And so I feel confident that technologically speaking, I'm covering as many bases as possible, which of course nowadays is becoming more and more important. Okay, in the session, one of the things that for those of you who are running for the House, and when you get into the House of Representatives of Montana and you look at that great Charlie Russell mural on the wall, you will be in awe. And you'll look around and you'll think, my goodness, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? And then I'll be interested in knowing how long it takes you before you look around and say, what are those other dumb SOBs doing here? You know, but anyway, that happens. But that Charlie Russell mural gives you a sense, and both the House and the Senate chambers here in our Montana Capitol are beautiful, and and help you remember that you are here to do the people's work. And so for those of you going into the House, and I have to confess, you know, I'm running for the Senate myself, but I'm going to miss the energy of the House. You walk into the House of Representatives with 100 members, the energy is palpable. And so and you will feel it, you'll feel it. And so you won't be bored. In the old man's house in the Senate, there might be times when you're bored, but everything is on a time schedule. And so make sure you time manage everything. And if you can, if you know you want to speak to a bill the next day, make sure you have your comments prepared if you can. There'll be times when you won't know and you'll just have to rise and wing it. But Anyway, so first, advice for freshmen. Fortunately, I was able to keep my own advice and I still live by it. As a freshman, do not think that you're going to submit a lot of bills. Work on 1 or 2 or 3 really bills that you really, really like and you really like to accomplish, and then concentrate on those. And some of the things you're going to need in order to get them to pass. First and foremost, get as many co-sponsors as you can for bills that might be controversial. That means co-sponsors in both the House and the Senate. And in order to do that, you, of course, are going to have to network. You're going to have to meet people. You're going to have to introduce yourself. You're going to have to conquer your natural shyness and be prepared to put yourself out there. So getting co-sponsors for a possibly controversial bill is crucial. Okay. Secondly, okay, do not assume that your caucus will support you. Everybody, there's whatever your caucus is. There were 67 members of the House in the last the 67th legislature, and you would assume that you would get 65 of those on any bill. No. Remember, no matter how much you may believe it's true, you as an individual do not have sole access to the truth. And consequently, you cannot expect your caucus to support you on any bill that might have the slightest bit of controversy associated with it. So what you need to do is you need to, and it won't take you long to figure this out if you're observant of human behavior, is figure out who the opinion leaders are in your caucus. Seek them out, seek their counsel, ask them for help on a particular issue or bill. Now, the big mistake I made on 2 crucial bills of mine that both passed the House and failed in the Senate was you have to do the same thing in the other house. You know, you often think, well, it passed the House, it'll take care of it. No, the other house has its own ego, its own agenda, its own personalities. And so if you want to guarantee that your bill gets past the second house, you got to do the same hard work of promoting it and putting it forth people and dealing with people and networking in the other house. Failure to do that will result in it being, if at best ignored, at worst opposed. Okay, so those are just 2 things. The biggest mistake I made, the criteria. One of my priorities has been a bill to exempt retired military pensions from the state income tax. I've got it through the House 2 times, and both times it failed by 1 vote in the Senate. And I was negligent in my promotion of the bill in that other house. So just a word to that. So, you know, if you have, hopefully we're going to have 70 members of the House and 33 members in the Senate. Okay, that's 103 people you need to know. Okay, you need to know them. You need to be able to talk to them and communicate with them. There'll be a couple that you'll soon learn that, you know, no matter what you do, they won't like you, or they won't like your agenda, or they may be, you know, undocumented Democrats. Who knows? But regardless, I offered you this arena operates on personal networking, and you may have to do what they call a little log rolling. You may have to offer to help them with what they want in order to get what you need. Excuse me. That's not necessarily the case on policy bills, but it is in appropriations. Okay, so that was my biggest mistake in both sessions, was my inability or my failure to network in both houses prior to final votes. And in that work. Now, additionally, I guess one of the things that I learned, I was told this by a longtime legislator, and I did not believe it would be possible for me. And so I'm going to tell you the same thing he told me. He said, there are 3 reasons why you go and you vote in the legislature. You will vote for things, you will vote against things, and you will vote against somebody. And I said, there's no way I'm going to vote. I'll vote for stuff and I'll vote against stuff, but I'm not going to vote against somebody. Yeah, you will. I guarantee it, you will. Because there'll be people that'll propose things that you won't trust. And I guess you have to adjust to your gut. And so I found that, to my dismay, my personal dismay, I found that I did that. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you which bills, but I will confess to that. So that's the crux of my biggest mistakes and my biggest hints in terms of campaigning and working a piece of bill on the legislature. Now, one of the things that is often recommended, and I recommend this, is that for you freshmen in the legislature, in the House, cultivate a friendship with somebody in an executive department, whether it's in the governor's one executive department, or whether it's in Elsie Arnson's in executive in the superintendent's office, or cultivate a relationship there and volunteer to run what we call a committee bill or an executive bill. These are generally Montana Code corrections or grammatical corrections or things of that nature. But if you can get one of those early in the session to run, they're not controversial. They often pass with almost a unanimous vote. You'll learn how to introduce it in the committee, how to defend it when from proponents and opponents in committee, how to prepare and give it introduction on the floor, and then to usher it through the second house. Okay, so if you can get that somehow, please do. It will make things easier for you. Okay, so that in a nutshell is a couple of the highlights that I wanted to make sure that you freshmen, because I know that everybody on this call tonight is going to win, and we're going to have a massive majority, and we got a lot of things to cover, everything from pro-life legislation to voter integrity to dealing with the Board of Regents to the budget surplus to property tax relief, and remember, don't lose focus, the press. And if those of you who were at the convention that have taken lessons from, for instance, AFP and others on dealing with the press, I would offer you to remember what my grandma always told me. When you're dealing with the press, a still tongue makes a wise head. Okay, so the less said, you don't have to refute later. Okay, so questions from anybody regarding in any shape, fashion, or form, I'd be happy to entertain those. I don't want to go on and on.
John, I formulated a few, and I see Rod's got his hand up too. So I'll start with one. I'll go back to Rod, then I've got a couple more. You started your call off by your own particular failure rate. And, I know this last primary across the state, we had 41 school board candidates run for that. And only a third of them won those seats. But you didn't stop. And I'm just wondering, how you picked yourself back up to run for election again when it came back around, because I know as these things go, we put all of our energy into it and we have high hopes of getting those seats. But I think you told me before that you've lost a couple times before you finally got elected.
Oh, I lost a lot of elections before I got elected. I lost a precinct committeeman race. I lost in a primary for state superintendent of public instruction. I lost in a house race up in Whitefish. And let's see. And of course, I also lost for student body president when I was a senior in high school in 1963. So, you know, and Abraham Lincoln lost 3 elections before he was ever elected. And he only served 1 term in the House of Representatives of the United States Congress, and then he was elected president. So, yeah, just, you know, sometimes it takes, and let's look at Matt Rosendale. Matt Rosendale, our congressman from Eastern Montana, has done just a heck of a job, an incredible job. And he lost a primary back for Congress. And then he lost another primary, I believe. And then he got elected to state auditor. And then he lost the Senate race. And then he's won a congressional race. And I really hope he stays in the House because he has done so bang up tremendous job. But the lesson is that perseverance, persistence. But you know, sometimes the tortoise wins the race.
Yeah, thank you. You know, the reason why I bring that up and why it resonated with me is because we need good people to run for office, and we know that we've got a much larger enemy out there trying to keep us out of office. And I don't want people to get discouraged that are willing to throw their name in the hat. There's plenty to do in between elections. And as you suggested, there's some wonderful people that didn't win the first time. And I hope that at least what was dear and near to my heart was all those school board elections. I hope that they all run again and continue to fight for those seats, and anybody else that needs to fight for a seat.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. Rod, go ahead with your question then. James, I'll get to you after Rod.
Thanks, Jim. John, I want to first thank you not only for your service, but for your candor. You know, to be able to speak about your experiences there, especially what you did wrong, I think is the best thing that any of us can get. And I think we never lose if we're learning. You know, there's no such thing as loss. And even I lost my last campaign, and I said a door wasn't closed and another one opened. A door was closed and a gateway was opened, you know? So it can sometimes lead to better things, you know? So I echo what Jim said, stay in there, stay in the hunt, stay involved, because we need good people. And the people who are running for whatever, whether it's school board or legislative seats or city council or mayor or county commissioner, we need good people, and we need them to stay involved. But my question for you, John, though, is this: you talked about, you know, building those coalitions and networking with people, and I stand back from the 30,000 foot level. It's not just what I would like to see passed, but from a state standpoint, how do you build coalitions for our Eastern Montana brethren who have so many different needs, and even their thought process is different about certain things? And most of I shouldn't say most of it, but we have a lot of Democratic strongholds in the eastern part of the state that I think we really can turn over. So how do you build coalitions with people who are approaching state business from such a different perspective? And can you give us any examples of how you've done that?
Well, Rod, you know, I can't say that I'm an expert on that arena or whatever. It's been my experience that it's easier to build coalitions and network with people from Eastern Montana than Western Montana. You know, just I'm not sure why that's so. My my wife, who is Southern, says that the people from Eastern Montana are more polite than people from Western Montana. And that's an indictment on us, I suppose. But and maybe that's part of it, in that their empathy is good. But you know, in this is a people business, okay? And so, being a people business, you have to learn to read people, and you know, and I find that it helps if you know if you get to know them, because then you know where they're coming from. Okay, what is their background? I mean, is this guy a wheat farmer or a soybean farmer, or is he a rancher? And they look at things differently if they're a rancher versus a wheat farmer, or are they, you know? Well, I mean, let's just give an example. Of the 33 Democrats in the House, there were 10 in the Indian caucus. Of the 23 of the others, only 5 or 6 of them were school administrators or school people. The rest work for nonprofits. That gives you knowing what they do, learn even the enemy, knowing in this case the enemy, but what they do and what they anticipate, or how they look at stuff. So certainly true of our friends on our side of the aisle. What is it that they want? And everybody likes people to show interest in them. So I guess that's what I'm saying is how do you find out what they are, where they're coming from. Aristotle teaches, they're a legislator most likely to give a history lesson with every speech. Aristotle teaches that you can learn the most about people by studying their beginnings. So what are they like before they became into the legislature? What did they do? How did they operate? And the more you can find out about that, the more you can predict what their values and or achievements will be in our house, in our current situation.
Thanks, John. You answered the question just by telling me that you knew and understood the demographics of all of the Democrats. Yeah, that speaks volumes right there. I mean, that's a sociology lesson, and understanding the demographics of the makeup of the House. That's incredible. And I would have had no idea that so many came from the nonprofit sector. That's actually incredible to me. But thank you. That really addressed, and it speaks well of Eastern Montana and your ability to reach out and understand them as well. So thanks for that. I'll yield the floor.
We have great people over there.
Rod, you're just saying that because you came from Eastern Montana.
Not untrue.
Hey, John, James Coco has a question for you. Go ahead, James.
Sure.
Thanks, Jim. John, thank you for taking the time out tonight. I appreciate it. I was wondering if you were talking about the process of initiating legislation and bills. Can you kind of just paint a picture of how that process looks like you personally? Like, do you come up with the bills yourself, or do people approach you? Are there other, do you listen to lobbies or groups or PACs? Like, I'm just wondering, because I have 1,000 things in my mind of things I would like to do in Helena, but I wouldn't even know where to start and which ones have meat in the bones. I don't even, how do you navigate that process?
Excellent question. And I apologize for not addressing it earlier. Okay. One of the first things you're going to do is when we go to the caucus meetings the week or a week and a half after the election, because you're going to get elected, okay, is that you're going to go down to legislative services and you're going to ask for bill drafts. And you're going to make a bill draft. And I would recommend that you make only a few. Now, Fitzgerald, Senator Fitzgerald, I think he had 48. Okay, but let's say, for instance, I introduced a bill to help get reciprocity for teachers' licenses from other states. So you'll have a bill draft a general revision of laws regarding teacher licensures. Okay, you want to make them as general as possible. And then as soon as the session starts, you'll contact legislative services, or they'll contact you, and they'll ask you specifically, what did you have in mind? And so you outline your points. And by that time, you better know, so you can tell legislative services. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a bill from another state that's already been written that you ask them to more or less copy and adjust to Montana. There's nothing wrong with that. For and I know that we're several legislators are already doing that. Okay, and now legislators, candidates who do not have a general election, whether they have no opponent in the general election or they're a holdover senator, can put in bill drafts now and are doing so. Okay, but in our case, we have general elections to win, so we cannot. We have to wait till after we win the general election. Okay, then they will give you a rough draft of the bill, and that's where your real work begins. You're going to burn the midnight oil on that, because you've got to pore over that bill, every single word, comma, period. Okay, you have to make it yours. You have to make sure that it outlines exactly what you want it to say. Okay, and you don't have a whole lot of time. They only give you 48 hours to get that done back to them, because remember that they're going to be somewhere in the vicinity of 1,300 bills that to be dealt with through legislative services in 90 days. Okay, so you're going to have to burn at midnight oil. You have to know exactly what it is. And there's a big difference between shall and may or should, using those words. Okay, and there's a big difference in where the commas should be. Like the old story, execution impossible, carry out, or put a comma in front of it, execution, period, impossible to delay, that kind of thing. It means a whole lot of, it means something very different. So make sure the grammar of your bill, when you finalize and you sign off on approval, is exactly as you want it. Then you will drop it in the hopper. Okay, and for your first bill, they'll take your picture and all that for the first bill to drop in the hopper in your respective clerk's office of your respective or your house. Okay, then you have to follow it. You'll get notice of when it's going to be brought before committee, and you have to introduce that bill to before the committee that it will be assigned to. And during that process, when you introduce the bill, you'll have to introduce what the bill is. You'll have to make an argument as to why it's necessary. You want to make an argument of why it should be supported. And then you'll have to be prepared to answer questions. And some of the questions will be very probing, not just from your own caucus, but also particularly from the other side of the aisle. And then the committee will, in executive action, either vote to allow the committee to the floor or reject it. Hopefully you will, because you're a part of the member of the majority party, you will offer up a bill that will be approved by the majority in your committee. And then your job will be to do the same thing on the floor when it comes to the floor. And then as I said, my big mistake was not making sure I had done the networking necessary in the other house. I just assumed because it passed with a large majority in the House that it would pass in the Senate. Not necessarily the case. Okay, does that help a little bit? Do you have some more? Okay. Okay.
John, since you brought it up, John, what does networking look like? I mean, is that literally, hey, I'll meet you at the bar later? Or are you trying to catch people in the hallways? What does real life networking look like, not only amongst your constituents, but the opposition and or the Senate?
Okay. Well, real life networking operates on, number one is always be friendly. I used to have a saying that as a teacher, I was always firm, fair, and friendly. Okay, but let's say you have a bill that's going to go to gets through that you get it. It's going to go to tax. So you need to know the members of your caucus on tax committee so you can get it out of your committee. You need to know the chairman of that committee, and you need to have a conversation with them, even though it might be brief. Find them and stake up a relationship with them and tell them, hey, my House Bill 111 is going to be up before your committee soon. What do you think about it? And whatever. And they generally know. Okay. And then make sure you have, the members of your committee on your party where they could be. And you might try to get a couple on the other side to vote for it too. I've had members of the Democrat caucus vote for my committees, for my bills in committee, and vote against it on the floor because they had to stick together. Okay, I've had Democrats help me get my bill through committee and then oppose it vociferously on the floor. But by that time, got enough of a coalition of my caucus to help get it through. So, knowing that. Now, there's just a wide variety of times to strike up acquaintances. We're social animals, people. So in committees before and after. I had a very good relationship with a very, very liberal member of the Democrat caucus in my first session. She was my seatmate. And we found common ground. She and her husband like to hunt. I love to hunt. And she introduces a bill every year to ban styrofoam containers, which to me is as ludicrous as you can get. But we found a common ground, the bill, and the two of us co-sponsored it to improve testing in elementary schools for possible dyslexic children. Something we had, a passion we had in common. And we were able to bipartisanly, even though the majority of the Democrat caucus disliked me immensely, in this particular bill, we got it bipartisan, and I believe we did some good things for the children of Montana. So I would have never known she was interested in dyslexia, and she would have never known that I was interested in dealing with children with dyslexia if we hadn't had some kind of conversation and relationship. So that's the best I can say. Constantly be ready to listen and ready to hear.
Great answer. I had another question for you about early expectations upon arrival. In other words, you mentioned committees and things like that. What are some of these early expectations? I think you've talked about, voting on who's going to be the speaker, or committees that you should jump into right away, different chairs, et cetera. What do you think people should be looking for?
Okay, very good question. And I was talking with another potential freshman earlier today, and I said this. One of the things as freshmen, you're going to be approached by people running for leadership positions. The speaker, the speaker pro tem, or the majority leader, and then for the whips. And there should be at least 5, if not 6 whips in the Republican Party. Okay, and I suggest, and I wish I had done this, I truly wish I had done this, is my suggestion is give me your plan for achieving the Republican agenda. Because as leadership, it will be their job to shepherd the bills, the platform bills that we hammered out in convention just last week or the week before. We hammered out, and there'll be all these bills that the leadership has to prioritize them and figure out a strategy for them to go and be accomplished. For instance, in the 67th legislature in 2021, the first bill that the leadership wanted was House Bill 102. In other words, a pro-Second Amendment bill that made Montana a constitutional carry state. And I was all on board with that. And I was glad that we did that. But what leadership wanted to do was it wanted to get that across the finish line before anything else so that we could tell the people of Montana who regard the Second Amendment as such an important issue that we could do things. And we right away ran up against the governor, who was more interested in a couple of other things. And but the point is, the speaker and the leadership of the House had a plan to get that done. That was one of the very first things they wanted to do. We got it done, but it was a little bit of a goat rope. So ask those potential leaders, what is the strategy? What are you going to do? What strategy do you have? Because one of the things that frustrated me as a freshman was I had no real coaching from the leadership. I did not know what their priorities were. I did not know what the priorities of the caucus were. And so that frustrated me. And if I was going for leadership, when I was a coach, I learned this from the great wrestling coach, Dan Gable, Olympic champion in 1972, one of the greatest wrestling coaches ever at the University of Iowa. He said, remember, each and every one of your wrestlers, and in this case, each and every one of our people, each and every, you need to speak with them, however briefly, every single day. Okay, so make a point, make your checklist, make sure, oh, I haven't talked to Representative Coco today. I better make sure I seek him out and see what I can do to help. Okay, that's the key. And when you're asking for leadership, ask them what they're going to do to help you achieve the agenda that they want to achieve. If they don't have a strategy, then all they want is the title. That's how I look at it. Okay. One of the best speakers we've ever had, well, two of the best speakers we ever had was Austin Knudsen, but Mark Blaisdell, when he was speaker. Mark Blaisdell, when he was Speaker of the House 10 years ago, passed House Bill 2, which is the budget bill. It passed unanimously. Unanimously. Never does a budget bill pass unanimously. He must have done something really. And I tried to get him to tell me his secret. And he claims he doesn't know what it was, but I think I know. Anyway. You get the point.
John, good answer. Thank you for that. One more question for me, and then I've got Rod. He's got his hand up. Curious, can you explain some of the dangers of this role? I mean, immediately comes to mind is the lobbyists that are lingering around and the pitfalls that freshmen might fall into when they get there. Can you talk about that at all? And then we'll go to Rod and then James again.
Okay. Well, I was, I knew all about lobbyists because of my teaching of government, et cetera, before I went into the bit. And I thought that I would constantly be besieged by lobbyists. And the answer was that I would walk down the hall and I'd be one of the legislators no lobbyist would ever buttonhole. And the reason is everyone knew where I was going to be. Everyone knew I'm as transparent as everyone knew. Now, what I would do, however, is if I had things I needed to know, I would find out who this was dealing with that issue. And I would go to them and I'd give them homework and I'd say, tell me what's good about this, or tell me why this is bad. And they would do that. They're a tremendous source of information. And remember, a lot of those lobbyists are former legislators. So they know where the bear went in the buckwheat. Okay, so they can be used, just don't let them use you. Okay. They're there to be used, and it won't take you long to figure out who the real players are. And of course, they all their stock in trade is their trust. Okay, and they very seldom. I've never had a lobbyist lie to me. I've had members of previous administrations lie to me. But I never had lobbyists lie to me, because once it gets out that they'll lie to you, then they're done. Okay, so use them, don't let them use you.
Good answer. Rod, go ahead. You got a hand up? Then we'll get to you, James.
Yeah, thanks. Real quick. So, John, did they not have like a freshman orientation, or do they do? Is there any sort of structure for incoming freshman legislators so that
Yes,
they can get this? And are there mixers? I guess that's the other thing, so they can start networking right away.
Yes, there is both of those, but they're short and sweet, and they can't begin to cover all the things you need to know. Okay, but so the lesson is, there's a steep learning curve for freshman legislators, no matter how experienced you think you might be. And but the biggest hurdle is the networking of the people, of the players. Okay, you have to know the players of the game before you can really understand the process.
Excellent. Thanks.
So take advantage of all of them.
All right, James has a question, and then I have one final thought I'd like you to cover, John, and then we'll start to wrap this thing up. So go ahead, James.
Thanks, Jim. So I'm gonna go pivot to pre-election question here, if that's okay with you, Jim.
Yeah.
So Rush Limbaugh once said, conservatives who run as conservatives win elections. John, as you know, I'm in a liberal district here in Bozeman. It's a D+6, I've been told, district. What advice can you give me about a pretty conservative person like myself running in this district and, winning independent voters, which I'm going to have to do if I'm going to pull off this win?
Okay, very, very good question. And if I knew a definitive answer, I wouldn't be an obscure pensioner running for the state senate. I'd probably be running for president. But I'll give you my best assessment, the best thing I can do. Okay, and it's something I live by. Number one is you got to follow your gut, be who you are. But that doesn't mean you have to get in someone's face. Never argue with a constituent. Never argue with a constituent. If they want to tell you that you're wrong, absorb it. Okay, but don't argue. Okay, if they're willing to listen as to your reasoning, then you give your reasons when there's something. But for instance, let's take an issue that's going to be get a lot of attention, but I don't think it's going to be the most important thing we're going to address, and that's the pro-life bills. Okay, you're going to be besieged by individuals that are going to claim that the Armstrong decision and the pro-choice decision is inviolate. And you are going to be accused of all kinds of things about making women destroy their privacy, yada, yada, yada. So here's my answer. You can take it or leave it. It doesn't matter. But this is my answer. I'm saying that, my big thing, and Jim has heard me say this over and over again, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution states that no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. All I'm asking is that unborn people get their due process, and leave it at that. Okay? And that covers a lot of ground, and yet it's extraordinarily pro-life. Okay? So don't argue with them. You're not going to, my daddy used to tell me, never argue with a drunk. Okay, don't argue with them. Listen, absorb, and then ask questions. Tell me what it is you want. And I still believe to the roots of my soul, James, I still believe to the roots of my soul that if you have a one-on-one conversation with these people, even though they may be of the opposite side of the aisle, if they have met you and they like you, they'll still vote for you. Okay, I believe that.
Thanks, John. Great answer. Lynn, I'm not sure if that's a statement or a question. If you want to type it in as a question, I can hit it up. While you do that, John, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to touch on the newly written or revised GOP platform. because the work that was done on that recently has been, just incredible, and it's got a lot of clarity. And I would imagine that you'll be walking into the next session with that in your back pocket and walking down those roads. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
I can. It's fairly lengthy. I urge everyone to read it. There'll be half of the House will not read our GOP platform. Now, some of them will be Democrats and some of them will be Republicans. You need to read the platforms of both parties. And in 2019 or 2018, the election of 2018, every time I was asked for the press what I was stood for or what I wanted, I said, my answer was simple. I said, I support the Montana Republican Party platform, period. End of story. Enough said. That's all I said. Okay. And that implied, obviously, that I had read it, and I had. It was my first platform convention that I went to in 2018, the summer of 2018. I went to that. I felt like a jack in the box. I made so many amendments from the floor because the teacher in me was upset at many of the grammatical and punctuation problems that I saw with it. But fortunately, many of them have been corrected. Yeah, stick by the platform. Okay. And if you get an independent, tell them www.mtgop.org. Read our platform and read what it really says, not what other people say about it. And then you know where I'm coming from.
Good answer. And by the way, I loved what Ron Elise said when she presented her portion of the platform, and that is she likes to have a piece of paper between her and the person asking the question as a little bit of a fallback. So James, you could also leverage that. Go in and read the GOP platform as it relates to some of these hot topics that you're going to encounter, because that document is all encompassing and it gives you the strength in numbers of the entire party to say, we feel this way about that issue. Right. So, and I believe that that's what Ron Lee meant by that, is you've got the strength in numbers of the entire party to say, this is how we feel about pro-life, our Second Amendment, and the list goes on. So I liked how she phrased that. So John, we do have a question from Lynn. And I think really what she's after is, of course, housing is a big issue in the state of Montana, especially in Whitefish and Kalispell over here. I would imagine Bozeman, Billings, Missoula. When somebody approaches you with, what are you going to do about the housing and our challenges there? Do you have any suggestions, maybe a top 3 ideas that are things that we can talk about?
Well, my first instinct when people say, what are we going to do about making housing more affordable? And I say, you don't want the government involved in your house, in the housing. You want the same people that brought you our national forest to solve our housing problem. I don't think it, but there's I fall back on economics, and again, our platform addresses this issue. Okay, but I fall back on economics. There's only 2 ways to increase. One is we increase the supply of housing, or B, we reduce the demand. Okay. And I would just point out is that the Republican Party is devoted to the idea of the government getting out of the way of private industry to solve the issues of housing and workforce development. Although we can do a lot of things as government to help workforce development, but particularly housing. And we as Republicans reject the ideas of rent ceilings, because rent ceilings become rent floors. We reject the idea of increasing regulations because but our answer is that local housing issues is best solved by the local officials, the local communities, county commissioners. And so our job as state legislators is to ease the process by which counties and other local jurisdictions can deal with that issue in an effective and compassionate way. That's what our job is. We cannot solve the housing workforce problem from the top down. We, as state legislators, have to make it so that those closest to the problem can deal with it. Okay, that's my answer to that.
I think it's a great reminder that we all stand for less government and getting out of the way, and anything we can do to apply that. Let's just drill down real quick on a little bit more of that question from Lynn. So Whitefish has hired Marissa Getz to specifically address the issues as a paid city employee. Would you recommend somebody like Lynn meeting with Marissa to get more insights, what she thinks the ideas are? Or is that kind of walking into a trap of accountability and what you're going to be expected to take to the House?
Well, my advice to Lynn is she meets with Marissa Getz. Now, Marissa Getz is the hired individual in Whitefish, correct? Because I believe that there's a Getz that ran in, it's not the same person, is it?
Go ahead and unmute, Lynn.
They are sisters. Braxton's
Okay.
opponent. She
Okay.
she has a sociology degree. Then she went to Harvard. She just got hired about a month ago. City employee, full-time, paid just for affordable housing. An answer for our affordable housing crisis. That's all she does. And her two
Okay.
ideas are the ones I put up there, cooperatives and shared equity. That's what she thinks is a good idea.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't know if I want to meet with her.
I concur. You don't want to meet with her.
Right, right.
You're right. You don't want her to have knowledge of you,
No,
nothing else.
yeah,
Okay. And if Whitefish City Council chooses to do that, they get what they deserve.
Mhm, mhm.
Unfortunately, you got a one city councilman that'll will be able to read through her smoke screen and let people know if they're paying attention. So yeah, just stay away. That would be my bet. Stay away.
Excellent. Hey, John, I want to thank you for your time. We're right at an hour. I want to be respectful of everybody else. We appreciate everybody coming on the calls and learning a little bit about getting elected and what it looks like to be in that elected position. John, we want to wish you luck in your Senate race and everybody else in the race for House or whatever it is that you're running for as you watch this later on. And just know that we're here as a resource. If you have other questions for John, feel free to reach out to us and I'll make sure I get them to him and we can get them answered for you in a timely manner. I know that John's been a great resource for a lot of people. And John, again, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, John.
Those who tuned in. And again, I always like to finish every conversation. If there's anything I can do for you, just let me know.
Thank you. Everybody have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thanks.